hard. Like, people have lost so many loved ones. It's been crazy.
Yeah.
So you are incredible. Okay. I know
Oh,
this might sound
thank you.
really weird to you, but your swing songs, I actually do contemporary dance and stuff. They're actually
Oh,
really fun to do, like, a little bit of my stuff too. So I don't know if
cool.
that's like weird or whatever, but like you're like
Oh,
Frank Sinatra level. Like your
oh,
voice is insane to me. So I just want to
oh,
say
thank you
like
so much.
kudos to that because incredible. So I think viewers would love to know just a little bit of like a superhero origin story, where you're from and stuff like that. Like how did you get
Okay.
into acting, and then now we're into music.
Yeah, well, I actually was pursuing music before acting. I grew up in
Oh
Brooklyn,
my
New York.
God, really?
Yeah,
Oh, awesome.
yeah, I grew up in the Flatbush section of Brooklyn, and went to Erasmus Hall High School, where Barbara Streisand went, and Neil Diamond went there for a while. A lot of famous people, and I was about 13 when I started going for lessons in Manhattan for singing and acting and some dancing. Dancing wasn't my choice, but that it kind of came along with everything
Were you good
because
at
I was
dancing?
not really. I can get by if somebody's working with me on something for a while,
Okay.
but I'm not a natural in that respect. But the singing, so there was singing and acting I was very interested in, and
Mm.
especially singing because when I was 9 years old, I saw a movie called The Jolson Story, which was a biopic about the great Al Jolson, who was considered back in his time the world's greatest entertainer. And he actually made the very first talking movie called The Jazz Singer back in 1927. But this was a movie about him, played by Larry Parks, but it was Jolson's voice on all the songs. And I was 9 years old, and it just had a very strong impact on me. I loved the music. I loved his talent came through in his voice. I loved his singing and the music, all the great standards. And my mom was a teenager during the swing era and young adults. So she had some swing albums, from some of the
Very
great
cool.
uh, orchestras of the day back then, whether it be Glenn Miller or Count Basie or Duke Ellington, all of those. So I'd heard a lot of that, but then seeing Jolson really did it to me. And then I wound up watching the movie like 10 times after that week because it was on every night. And then I got his albums and I started singing. I'm 9 years old.
You
I was
kind of
singing all
fangirled a little bit. Just
the
a little bit.
yeah, yeah. And then by the time when I was 13, my parents knew how much I wanted to kind of pursue it. So that's when I started going for these classes, and it led to me singing. I got picked to be in this nightclub review of teenagers. There were 7 of us, ages 14 to 16, and I was so I spent the summer in the Catskill Mountains, which at the time was a big resort area, upstate New York. All these hotels with nightclubs, and so I spent the summer performing at all the different hotels in this nightclub review, and I was just turning 15. So
Wow.
that's how it all started, and then I switched my focus really into acting the next year. It was a major switch. I was seeing all these great movies, and I was inspired and influenced by people like Jack Nicholson when he was just
Oh,
starting
wow.
out,
He's amazing. Yeah.
and Dustin Hoffman, of course, and Paul Newman back then, and so many others. And then I really got serious about the acting, and I went into a different class that was mainly, it was more serious on the acting side. So I was about 16 when I entered that class, and then I, started working. I was able to get an agent through the class. The acting teacher knew a manager actually that handled teenagers and kids,
Mhm.
and she took me on and started sending me out. Uh, I got out on a lot of commercials back then, and wound up doing a lot of national commercials. I did in the next 4 years. I did like 40 commercials.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was really, getting a lot. And I was going to college and commuting from Pennsylvania to Manhattan for these auditions. It was crazy, you know. And then I went up after 4 years, and I went up to LA after my junior year for the summer, just for the summer. But then I started getting work, you know, started getting going on auditions and getting some jobs, and decided to stay in LA, take 6 months off of school, and, you know, see what happens. And then I just got more work, and then got Happy Days. So I never made it back from my senior year.
You know, but you've done so many incredible things. I think something that I want to ask is, on your first singing class, like, was there anything that like really like you felt like this set me up, especially in your acting classes? Because like there's always those little things that like nobody shares, but I think people might find interesting that like stood with you, like, you know, use your voice like this or don't do that.
Oh, I see. Did I learn anything? I'm trying to think of
that like set you up, like you think about it still to this day.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's interesting. I'd have to think. And singing, I don't really know that I got any single thing like that. Because, you know, I went to, after that, I studied voice a few years later with a different teacher, totally different teacher she taught even opera singers. And then when I was in LA, I studied with 2 other voice teachers. So I can't remember any one thing, but I think in acting, I would say the thing that really stood out for me, and it was, and it took a long time to really, even though I might have understood what this man was saying, in order to integrate it and assimilate it and actually do it, took me a while. And this was the director of Happy Days. His name was Jerry Paris, and he had been an actor himself. That's how he started. He was in a movie, The Wild Ones, with Marlon Brando. He was in a movie with Humphrey Bogart, Caine Mutiny. He was in the movie Marty with Ernest Borgnine, who won the Academy Award for that movie. And Jerry played his brother-in-law. So he came, you know, he was a very experienced guy. And then he was directing all the Dick Van Dyke shows. And then we were lucky enough to have him as a director. And he became almost like a mentor to me. He really liked what I was doing, and we liked each other a lot. I mean, all of us got along, but he was kind of like my uncle, he became. And he used to say to me, and this is the thing that I guess set me up, is he said, you just have to trust yourself. Because he was like saying, you know, you've done, you know what you're doing. You know, I studied, I went to class, and I did a lot of work, so I had some experience. And he was like seeing me doubting myself. He was
trust your ability.
Yeah, to really just trust the ability and not be in my head so much trying to control anything, or because in acting you have to kind of be in the moment and be really in that moment to moment, as opposed to watching yourself doing it and, you know, judging yourself. So that was the biggest lesson, I think, the most important one, to really get to that point of trusting and then being able to let go.
I think that's like highly important though, because like when you're acting and like you're thinking of every single line you have to say, you're almost like becoming like a statue. Like you want everything to flow. So that little piece of advice is highly impactful to, I think, a lot of people who will replay this and be like, taking notes. So, okay.
Yes.
I need to know what your favorite role is. Redhead to redhead, New Yorker to New Yorker. I gotta know. You had the most fun. Role. You felt like you just immersed yourself in the role.
Yeah, that's a you know, of course the role I did on Happy Days is you know, always up there, up there at the top. But I'd say there in recent years I've gotten a chance to do some really interesting roles in some nice independent films where they're very different than myself and different from other roles I've played. So I guess. I would say, gosh.
You're like, I wasn't prepared for this, Lillee.
It's tough because on stage, I once did a play a long time ago called Wait Until Dark, where I played the sort of psychopathic killer.
Okay.
And so it was such a stretch, but I really felt good about what I did. But more recently, I'd say the movie Lost Heart is right up there. I did that a few years ago, and it's on Amazon Prime right now.
Cool.
And I play a small town pastor, and it's a very different kind of role, but it's a beautiful script, and all the actors in it were great. So Lost Heart is one that I've really, I definitely immersed myself in that character.
Now,
so that would be one.
The slasher, though, I got to know a little bit more about the slasher. Like, you go up to the screen like.
Well, it wasn't that kind of a play. It was a famous play made into a movie that starred Audrey Hepburn, and she plays a blind woman, and the killer or the villain of the piece in the movie was played by Alan Arkin, who was amazing in it. Robert Duvall did it on the play version. So it's more of a psychological thriller. It's not.
Okay.
You see, so it's kind of like this mind game and this duel of minds between this blind woman and this guy he's invaded her home.
He's preying on her.
He's looking for something, and he thinks that they're hiding. He's looking for something that he had stashed on her husband's suitcase or something, and now he's trying to get it. And so it's this battle of wits between the two of them that goes on for a long time, and it's very suspenseful and great writing, and to play this character was such a, at the time I did it, I was doing Happy Days, and this was during the off season. So I was able to do some theater in between.
That's really cool.
So here I was, still known from Happy Days, and then here I'm playing this like crazy different character, and I see
you're like so excited about it. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was a challenge, but I really felt great about what I did, and I did immerse myself in, well, not too completely, because I didn't want to go
just enough to make it entertaining to people and yourself. So music-wise, let's go to now. Okay. What made you decide, like, you know what, I'm going to just fully go on stage
and do the singing? Yeah.
Well, and the albums.
Well, what happened was, as I mentioned, I started out really doing that first. When I was singing in those nightclubs. So that was my first love, I like to say, and it was in my blood. And I've been singing that music, even though I put it aside for the most part when I focused on acting. There were times when it came into play when I did some musical theater and the singing was involved, and so I did that. And then every once in a while, I might have done some singing at like a charity event or a telethon, something like that, and on TV a few times. But I wasn't seriously pursuing it until what happened was, I loved the Great American Songbook and the jazz standards and swing and big band and all of that. So I'd be singing that by myself and all for years, And then I finally, 7 years ago, I think it hit me. I had been in the hospital for something. I had to have some surgery, and I was in the hospital for like 17 days.
Oh.
And then I came out of there, and because looking back, now I realize when it happened, it was not too long after that when I remembered saying to myself, if I'm ever going to do the singing, I'm not getting any younger, that I better start.
Trust your ability. It's coming back to you. Trust your ability.
Yeah, and do what I want, do what I still have passion for. What I still had a lot of passion for, and also because the music that we're talking about was during the 70s when Happy Days was on and early 80s. It wasn't really in favor that much. It was looked upon as like, Sinatra, and that was looked upon as like my parents' music or my grandparents' music. But then it started coming back into vogue again, when Harry Connick started doing it in Harry Met Sally, his songs. and then people like Natalie Cole and Tony Bennett, of course, and Diana Krall, who I love, and more people. All of a sudden, it was like becoming cool to do that music, which I always loved. So I'm like, it's great. This music is back. It's not going to be like trying to beat my head against a brick wall to do this kind of music. And now's the time. So I put together an act. I picked out the songs. A man who I knew that I worked with, I picked him to be my musical director. And then we started off. I was able to get a booking at a jazz club in Los Angeles called Vitello's. And that was my first nightclub gig, so to speak. And it went great. It was a blast. It was a total blast. And everyone's going, wow, we didn't know you could sing like this. And, all that.
Yeah, honestly, at first people say they're singers and you're like, oh, all right. But when I heard you sing, I was like, I feel that like from your stomach up, like that Sinatra sort of like, hey, and I was like, did that just come out of his mouth? Like incredible voice. I was like, oh my goodness. So
thank you so much.
That definitely is really cool.
Yeah, and then I did an album a few years ago with all the great jazz standards with a wonderful group of Los Angeles jazz studio musicians, and it's a big band sound, 17-piece band, and in some cases more with strings and everything. So that's called Mostly Swinging is the name of that CD on iTunes and Amazon. And I'm working on another one, right? We were almost finished, but I'm working with a producer in the Nashville area. And cool. it's different. It's going to be different. It's still going to be jazz standards, but instead of the big band, it's a more contemporary jazz setting, like just the nice rhythm section, guitar, piano, bass, and drums. And maybe there'll be a saxophone on this song, or maybe a trumpet solo here. So it's a more contemporary jazz kind of feel, but it's coming along great. And then when COVID hit, we couldn't finish. So I'm going to Nashville in about a month to finish it. And I'm really excited because it'll come out sometime this year.
So, I must say I like Clementine. That's kind of like something that I like.
Great.
What would be like your favorite song from your album? That one, the 2017 one.
Wow, yeah, Clementine's up there, you see, because I was, besides Sinatra, who I, of course, loved, I was a huge Bobby Darin fan. And Bobby could do that kind of music. I mean, Sinatra was kind of his idol. And Bobby could do that. I saw him at a nightclub in New York City called the Copacabana, the famous Copacabana nightclub, when I was 18. So I loved Bobby, and that he did Clementine on his second big album called This Is Darin. And I used to sing along with that all the time. So I had to do it on mine.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I'm glad you picked that one out.
Yeah, no, I love it because when you like contemporary dance or like, you're warming up, because like that's kind of how I like to warm up, you kind of get into it, and it's like really cool and fun, and it's nice to see something new, like not something like, old. It's just like a new song, fun and different, and I love that. Yeah. So
that's definitely, if I had to pick another one, gosh, I don't know.
You're like going down the list.
Yeah. I love After You've Gone. It might not be as popular as some of the other songs to people, but I was really happy with that's a great old song that Al Jolson used to do. It's from the 1920s. So After You've Gone is up there, and then maybe Day In, Day Out I like a lot also. But I love them all, so it's hard.
Well, obviously, they are your songs. I am curious, why are you going for more of a contemporary with the new one coming up? I'm not hating it. I'm curious.
Yeah. Well, it's still going to be the jazz standards, songs that I love. It's just a different approach, a little different feel. Just like sometimes as a jazz audience, sometimes I would want to go and hear a big band, really going crazy. We used to go see Buddy Rich with his big band all the time when I was younger. So sometimes I'd love to see that. But then also there'd be times when I'd be into seeing, a great saxophonist with a rhythm section or a trumpet and a smaller group. And it's a different a little more subtle, a little different kind of next few years. And one thing that helped a lot too is I did some theater during that time, because that keeps you, keeps you sharp and keeps that. There's nothing like
fresh.
Yeah, and keep that muscle going. Keep like working out your going to the gym,
stretching your abilities.
Yeah.
What do you think about typecasting today, as opposed to back then? Because it's still happening. People who play like superhero roles, they're like, oh my god, and like the guy who played Aladdin, he cannot get any roles. They're like typecasting him as Aladdin now.
Yeah, I imagine it still happens. I guess it depends on what role you break out in, and some are harder to shed than others. Some are tougher. The one thing that's that's better now, easier and better, is that back then when I was doing the show, if you were on a TV show, it was very, very rare and hard for you then all of a sudden to be doing films. Back then it was like, TV and film, it was like almost a separate kind of a class. It was like you were in a different class. And the actors didn't think that way, but that was the sort of the industry sort of, they only wanted to cast people who were known from films. Today, the film actors are doing TV shows, the actors in television shows are doing films. Is like a bridge between the mediums, where back then it was much harder, and very few people made that transition.
So definitely, what would you like to see improved in Hollywood standards? Since you're clearly very passionate about this part,
Yeah. Wow. Well, I think, like I said, they are opening up more so to people being able to play, not only TV and film, but also different kinds of characters. I think that there's a little bit more of an open mind. So, but like you pointed out, it's still the typecasting still does exist. So, I guess just to give more people like that a little bit more of a chance somehow. It's very hard though, because the competition is so fierce. There's so many people trying out for these roles that's why it makes it hard for them to. Sometimes they'll take the easier way out, and it's very easy to cast this person because he's known for that, and it's very easy to cast this person. It's a little bit harder for them to cast somebody that's not. If they go out on a limb.
Yeah, if they saw people for their ability, what they could do, I think that would be a really nice change. I think that'd be really good.
Yeah. If they're a little more open to letting people have a chance to show something different other than what they're known for. Yes. Yeah.
Don, this has been incredible. We know you have something new coming. So is there anything else you could say about that? Or no?
Well, there are. I've directed 3 independent films. Really? Yeah. One is called some time ago. One is called The Last Best Sunday. It's on Tubi. You can watch it. It's a really very nice dramatic film. 2 teenagers, male and female. It's kind of a interesting, almost a little Romeo and Juliet kind of a story, and really, really great acting in it. The Last Best Sunday, and then I did one called Moola, Moola, which I cast and gave her first film role. It was Shailene Woodley, who you probably know who Shailene is. So she was 13 when she did Moola for me, and now I'm attached to direct 2 films, and we're trying to get it set up, get all the money, the financing, and we're getting closer. So I'm hoping. I can't talk about what they are yet, but I'm excited. One of them is actually, there was a post about it on Facebook. It's called Trauma Land. So if you look on my Facebook page under Don Most, people will see that learn a little bit about it, and it'll be a great film. So I'm hoping to do that. And on the acting side, I just found out today I won an award at
What?
There's something in New York called the New York International Film Awards.
Congratulations.
Yeah, New York International Film Awards. They have it every month. They get submissions from all over. And I was in a piece called, it's part of a series that we're trying to get going called Viral Vignettes. And one of the episodes of Viral Vignettes was called Scrambled. And I did it with a wonderful actress named Gail O'Grady. And it was submitted and accepted into the New York for January, the New York International Film Awards. And I just found out today that I won Best Actor in the comedy, and we won Best Duo, me and Gail O'Grady.